Always wanted a pet but not allowed to have one? Well, stick around because I'm going to give you an art solution. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Art a la Carte, and in this episode I'm going to show you how you can take a plain rock like this and turn it into a really cute pet. A few months ago I went for a walk on one of my local beaches and it was just filled with tons and tons of different types of rocks, and I was inspired to do something I did a long time ago when I was younger and made some really fun rock pets. So I had to pick out a few rocks to take with me. A couple things you want to look for when choosing out the perfect rock pet is you want to make sure it's not a sandstone, as it will disintegrate after time, and then all the hard work that you put into making your rock pet will disintegrate along with it. So here are 3 of the rocks that I got from the beach, and so you can use whatever size or shape that you like. You just have to be able to look at it and be able to see what it is that you would like to paint on this, and it's super fun. So I picked these up, I took them, I gave them a bit of a wash to get any sand and salt residue off of them, and they're pretty much dry. So now we can start painting. So I'm going to be using this medium-sized rock and turning it into a turtle. And so just basically I want to be able to see the turtle shape in this. So the fun thing about rocks is it doesn't have to be something like when you're painting on paper, you're just going to apply paint and create your 3D image. But with rocks, the whole thing is the painting. And so you really have to think in a 3D mindset. So there's the shell, and I'll have his little head kind of poking out, and his little feet, and his undershell, and his back little feet, maybe his little tail there. And so, yeah. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to lay down my base color first. Now if you need to, you can go ahead and take a piece of chalk and pre-draw out your design if you want to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and paint it in. Remember, with acrylic paints you can always paint over it, so if it's not working out for you, you can kind of fix it. But I'm going to paint in the openings for the opening in the front of the shell and in the back of the shell. So you also want to make sure it's even, so remember to move this around and you can kind of measure with your fingers how far things come down, because it's really kind of different than painting on a flat surface. You're painting on a dimensional surface, so you can move it all around and turn it and all that and kind of get a good look of things. Also make sure that your paint is getting into all the crevices and little nooks and crannies. Depending on how opaque your paint is, you might have to go over with several different coats. I'm using just a regular craft paint that I got at, I think I got this at Walmart for like 50 cents or something. The front end is nice. You just want to pretend like you're holding a turtle shell and you're just seeing the kind of the opening there. So this part's going to come up a little bit higher here, and this is a little bit flatter. So I'm going to rotate this around and do the back end. What do I look for when I look for a turtle shell? I'm looking for a kind of an oval shape or a circular shape that's more rounded on top but has a flatter bottom. That's what I look for. But you could paint a turtle on any shape you want. That's kind of the fun of going rock hunting, is going and looking through all these rocks and trying to see what creatures you could see them being. And again, just kind of making sure that's even on both sides. And I'm actually going to bring this line all the way across because there's a definite definition between the top shell and the bottom shell. So there's the underside there, the front, the back, and the top. So we'll let this dry for a second and then we'll start putting it on our green. Now, of course, you can paint your turtle to be any color you'd like. You could have, you know, realistic turtle or kind of a fun fantasy looking turtle. That's really up to you, so just have fun with that. But I'm going to start with a mild kind of mid-tone, so it's not too dark, not too light. Then I'm going to cover in the basic part of the shell, and then I'll begin to put in my highlights and my shadows. And you can see that this green isn't as opaque as my black, so you can see the stroke marks of my paintbrush, and that's okay because I'm actually putting a lot of paint on this. I just want to get the base coat done up first, and then we'll continue on having fun with that. So it's a little challenging when they get really, really wet to get everything painted. If you're in a dry climate, this is going to dry really fast. I live right on the coast, so we have a very wet climate. Things don't tend to dry very quickly here. So sometimes it takes a little time, but if you want to speed that along, you can get like a hair dryer and blow dry it. Hope that'll dry. If you have a heat gun, you can use that. And you also want to make sure that you have some sort of protective surface that you're painting on. I'm using my painting mat, but if you have like some newspaper, you can put that underneath there just to protect your table surface. Now we can go ahead and begin adding in our darker colors and our lighter tones. So I'm going to pull in some yellow here to help add in a little bit of highlight. And I'm going to begin to block in my shape. So I'm going to use my brown and a little bit of yellow mixed with the green that's on my paintbrush to get kind of a dark green color there. And I'm going to begin to just very carefully sketch in my design. And you're just going to begin to build up your color on your turtle. I'm going to use the lighter shades to bring things forward a little bit. Even though you have a nice dimension, you're going to want to give a little bit of texture, so you're going to use all of those little tricks to pull in your different values, pushing things forward, pushing things back, all that fun stuff. As you begin to divide in the top of the shell, you're going to want to just sketch in really lightly. You can either do it with your paintbrush, or you can do it with, you know, a piece of chalk. Works really great. And just begin to sketch in those little designs and patterns and things like this. In the breaks between the patterns, use a lot of darker colors to push those back. And in the center, where you want them to kind of poke out a little bit, you're going to use a lot more highlights. So you can see we're really covering up a lot of this initial green, but we want that green under there just in case, you know, there's a little bit of a thinner spot. You're not going to be seeing the rock underneath it. You just want that nice coat. You just play around with it. You'll find just the happy little balance that you need with it. And just keep on building up that contrast between dark and light until you get just that, just the way you want it. Remember, the more you blend, the more realistic things are going to look. There we go. Once you have the top shell done, you're going to want to let this dry really, really well because you're going to be handling and touching the top part and you don't want anything to smear. So either give it a good 10, 15, 20 hour, day, night to dry, or just use a little blow dryer and blow dry it and get it dry really fast. So we're going to start off with a kind of an ovalish shape right in the center there. Make sure you got the front end and not the back end. And I'm going to use kind of a muted down color. And I'm not going to go all the way towards the edge. I'm going to after a bit, but I want this part here to be nice. It's always best to start your circle small and you can build it up. But it just saves you having to go back and repaint some of the black. So there's his face, and we're going to go ahead and let that sit for a second. And while we do that, I'm going to go ahead and paint in his first little foot right here. And you can have it kind of come out a little bit out of the shell and down. Just like that. So kind of two little ovals on each side for his little feet, and an oval in the center. And again, keeping in that nice black space, because the black space is what's going to pull it into the shell. Now my green isn't so opaque, so it's having a little bit of that black showing through. So before I get into my details, I want to make sure that my base color is nice and thick. So I'm going to go over that with another coat of base. Now we're going to begin to pull out some of his features. So I'm going to go in with my black here, and I'm just going to find out where his little mouth is. And to make a mouth for a turtle, you kind of want to start here, and you're going to make a little V coming down right here in the center. Just like that. So it's like this little V, or kind of a bird flying there. Then I'm going to loosen up my paint a little bit. I'm going to get some of my dark green. And from this point down, I'm going to blend it down here. So that it's not such a vivid line, as more of a shadow of that top part of his head overshadowing the bottom part. So I'm going to kind of blend those colors together a little bit. And then I'm going to just get a little bit looser on the paint, and I'm going to blend out a little bit of that dark shade around the side of his face so that his nose is kind of sticking out just a little bit. So with that lighter shade towards the bridge of his nose is going to bring that out towards us, where this is going to push it back. And with that dark shade, you can kind of fade that into the black back there. So you can kind of see a little hint of his little turtly neck. And then I want to add a really nice highlight. So I'm going to get a nice kind of a yellowish white. I'm going to put a little strip right there. And I'm going to kind of clean my brush off a little bit. And then just blend, blend, blend. Just tap that out, kind of a stippling motion. That's going to bring a nice shine to his nose, and it's really going to have that project out there. I'm going to bring that all the way down to the V of his beak. Well, he doesn't have a beak, but his little mouth there. And then I'm going to go in with a nice brown mixed with a little bit of yellow. I'm going to tap this in for his eyes. On either side. And then I'm actually going to use this end of my paintbrush. I'm going to dip that into the paint so there's just a little bit of a kind of a little ball of paint on there, and I'll just tap that on. And you want to be really careful, and you're going to tap that in the center of his eyes, and that's going to give him his little pupil. There we go. But I'm just going to let that be for a second. I'm going to move on to his little feet here. I'm going to tap that in for some highlights of his little feet here on either side. And I'm going to go in with my darker shade. I'm going to pull that in on the bottom there. And then I'm going to go in with some kind of white again, mixed with a little bit of yellow, and just tap in a little bit of highlights, kind of a textured. Clean my brush off. I have a little damp but clean brush, and then just kind of fade that out just a little bit. There we go. And if you feel like you have a little bit too much, you can go back in with some green. Just tap in your green a little bit. Just get that balance going on there. Now let's go ahead and move to his belly. So his belly is going to generally be a lighter color than the top. So instead of having that just regular green, I'm going to come in with a green mixed with a little bit of yellow and maybe just a little bit of white to get kind of a light creamy green color. And I'm just going to cover his whole body with that. And if it's too bright and vibrant, you don't want it too vibrant. I might add a little bit of brown in that just to kind of tan it down just a little bit. And I'm going to cover all around that. The only place I'm going to be careful is around his little face and his little feet to get a nice smooth coverage there. You want to fill in all the little crevices. And I'll sometimes use a broader brush for the center part, and then when I want to get to the edges and get that nice crisp line, I'll switch over to a smaller brush that's a little bit more fine point. Alright, once this is dry, just like you did with the top, you're going to begin adding in your textures. And again, if you need to look at reference photos of what that underside of a turtle looks like, it's a little bit different depending on the type of turtle, or you could just have fun, make it up yourself. But you just remember, you're going to keep things a little bit lighter than you did on the top. Last but not least, we're going to put in his tail and his hind legs, and very similar to how we put in his little face there. So we're going to start off with kind of a mid-tone there, and I'm just going to make this little triangle shape that kind of comes down. You don't have to have it too long. Have a dimension, a little shadow on the shell behind there. Going to help define that out a little bit. Add a little bit of highlight to it. But again, you don't want to bring that all the way up to this color. You want to leave a little bit of black. Get your brush a little wet, kind of clean it up a little bit. You can kind of smear that paint and blend that into that. You want to create that shadow going into the shell. And then along the sides, you're going to add in your little hind feet there. And then add any of the kind of shading and shadowing that you want on your feet, highlighting all of that, and then add a little shadowing around the shell to kind of pull those out a little bit will really help. There we go. Once he's all dry, your turtle is done. So very cute. And it's very fun just to kind of have him sitting and stuff. You could put him out in the garden. Again, if you want to put him outside, I would put some sort of definite protective coating over him. Now, as many of you guys know, I am a total nerd, geek, whatever you want to call me. And so I have one other special touch I want to do to my cute little turtle. But this is also completely optional. Not only is it fun to go out on a nature walk and keep your eyes open for possible pet friends, but it's fun to create them as well. And there's tons of different types of pets you can do. This video, I just showed you how to make the turtle. If you'd like to see other ones, let me know in the comment section below, and I will show you some more rock pet painting videos. That will be super fun. Big news, we reached 75,000 subscribers here on Art a la Carte, so the Draw My Life video is coming. It should be out, hopefully. Will be out on Wednesday, so be looking for that. Friday's video is going to be extra awesomely cool, so if you're not a subscriber, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. And until next time, God bless you guys, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye!